Howdy, folks. This is Daniel Meets, and I will be reading excerpt number 5 from the book First Sight by author Chun Jingyuan. 3. I could eat a horse, Solun said, as he stretched lazily in our sedan. Father was riding ahead of us with Lord Marantah and Lady Haluna. Your mind just does not ever leave your stomach, does it? Tara asked, her eyes slitted in jest. Solun slowly leaned forward and eyed his sister with mild incredulity. You do realize that we're headed to breakfast, don't you? Save your strength, cousin. Women never understand, I told Solun, as I patted his shoulder commiseratingly. It's like they run on some mysterious force that does not come from food. I'm looking forward to breakfast, too, Tara rebutted. I'm just not acting like I want to swallow livestock whole. That's just unnatural, Solun said seriously. Tara let out a small, involuntary laugh. Solun continued. Their food is really good. It is, I wistfully agreed. Tara scoffed in amusement as she folded her arms and leaned back in her seat while looking out the window. But for real, though, Solun said thoughtfully. The mood in the sedan turned serious. Did either of you notice how well they speak our tongue? Tara nodded. Marantah says he learned from his slaves. But how common are slaves from the Serpent Coast here? Have they been capturing people along the coast? Or the neighboring islands, I added. Or maybe they bought them, Solun suggested. I've heard of slave markets to the east. Either way, it has to be a great many slaves for so many of them to have learned our language so well, Tara said, looking uncomfortable. How have we never heard of these Homets? That worries me, Solun said. We got off the sedan and followed a slave through the palace again, this time climbing a flight of stairs to the 3rd floor. There, we were led into a simple but gracefully furnished chamber. Warm sunlight poured through a large window over a group of divans set against small tables, much like the ones featured in the previous night's banquet. The king will be with you shortly, our attendant informed us. I admired the chamber's decorations, paintings and potted plants. A giant map had been painted over the south wall. I looked over it. The Serpent Coast was north of here, stretching before a continent unexplored. To the east were waters and lands that I was as likely to be familiar with as I was not. I frowned when I came upon an illustration to the southwest. Lord Marantah, I said, stepping closer to the map. This place. What is it? I pointed out the series of rings, feeling something eerie as I did so. I could not read the name of the place. That is Atlantis, Selu, Marantah informed me. I turned to regard him with an even deeper frown. My father and cousins watched me questioningly. Atlantis? You've been there? I asked Marantah. Why, just a few months ago, Marantah replied. It is a remarkable city. I returned to the map, staring at it with unease. Tara made a move to ask me something, but she was interrupted before she could get the words out. My friends, Isotep's deep voice rolled around the room. We turned to see the old king enter the chamber with his son at his side. My king, Marantah said. He and his wife bowed, reminding us of the customs of this land. We followed. At ease, my lord, the king said, waving a hand. We're among friends here. I don't believe we've met, Marutep said as he approached me. He had a higher voice than his father's, but it was firm. Prince Marutep. I am Selu. Well met, Prince, I said.
Sit down, all of you,
Isotep burst out merrily. He turned to an attendant at the entrance.
And bring us some food, will you?
The slave nodded and scurried off. We took our seats on the divans.
So, you must tell me more about these ceremonial hunts of your people,
Isotep urged father.
You say that you use no arrows or throwing spears?
No, my king, father said casually. We approach our quarry as silently as we can, then attack with a short spear.
Marvelous! Such bravery! Isotep exclaimed. And you say the women participate in these hunts, too?
They do, father said, nodding lazily. I have trouble envisioning such a fair creature as yourself accomplishing such feats, Marutep said, pointing his words to Tara. You must be very skilled. You are very kind, my prince, Tara said. I did not feel very skilled when I had my arm broken by a great bear. I would have skinned the beast alive for harming such a lovely thing, the prince said with indignation. Your words are once again kind, my prince, Tara said gently. I fought the urge to smirk. Tara caught the expression, and I swear tongues of flame leapt out at me from her eyes. She went on. However, I assumed the risk of injury the moment I picked up the spear, and the great beast was fighting for its life, as is the right of all nature.
Well said,
Isotep said. He turned to father.
You have a fine niece, Taran.
Father's eyes filled with love as he gave Tara a small smile. My only regret is that she is not my own daughter. Tara's eyes lit up at the words, and I felt her energy soar. Slaves entered the chamber, carrying plates of food. One of them knelt and whispered to Isotep. The king sighed and addressed us.
It is a shame,
the king told us, looking crestfallen.
But the princess is unwell, and will not be attending breakfast today.
A small burst of joy in the energy of the room caught my attention. My eyes jumped to the source of the disturbance. It was subtle, but a sneer was fading from the prince's expression. I looked around at my cousins as father offered his assurances to the king. They had sensed it, too. So, a rocky relationship between siblings, I thought. We finished up breakfast with the king and got into our sedans once more. Lady Haluna was to give us a tour of the city center. So, a little sibling rivalry, Solon commented, when we were sure we would not be overheard. It was more than that, Tara said seriously. We both looked at her. Tara may not be as sensitive as Scylla, but she certainly is way ahead of us. I sensed real animosity coming off him. He at the very least feels that she's a threat. I thought about my experience with the princess the previous night. Tara turned to me. What was that about Atlantis earlier on? I had a vision of the city, right before Maranta arrived on our shores, I said. Both my cousins looked curious. I described what I had seen. I'd always thought it an old wives' tale, something Vega made up, I finished. Do you know why you were given this vision? Solon asked. I shook my head. I had the sense that the answer was with me, just out of reach. Maybe it has something to do with the Homets, Tara said. I'm sure of it, I said. But what? We sat in silence for a while. Well, that's it for excerpt number 5. For more of the story, you can listen in to the next excerpt or get the book on Amazon. The sequel, Betrayal, is now available. Links are down below. Or for more information, visit the YouTube channel Formlessness.